Okay, so good morning, everyone. Another one of Mark's little midnight devotions. Me and sleep, we have clearly had a divorce, and no one told me because it's 1:10 over here, and I've been probably lying in bed wide awake for an hour or so. Just I actually resisted looking at the phone to see what time it was. I think I've probably been there lying wide awake for at least an hour, and then when I look at the phone, it's 1:10. I got up. I thought it's 1:10. Sleep, where have you gone? It's all right if it doesn't come back. If it doesn't want to be here, yeah, it's lost because it means I get time with Jesus, and I just get time to put on music, and I'm just not getting too loud because it is 1:10 in the morning. I need to understand that people for a kilometre around me, they don't want to get loud with me. So anyway, all good. I've been looking at something, pondering things, obviously pondering a lot of things. All of them really good things. I've had two, not even, I actually two, not even good days. I've actually had two exceptional days in a row. Yeah, just joy and gladness. And yeah, we went out for tea the other night. A couple from the supermarket were leaving, going to Perth. So we did sort of a farewell dinner in the local pub for them. It's actually quite a nice meal. And yeah, people sort of, anyway, people have commented on how happy I seem to be. And, of course, they're all unsaved. So they're joking as to why that might be. But I've had two exceptional days, two really good days. But what I've done is I went away and I wanted to have a look at um, what does the Bible say about grief? The Bible. What does the Bible say about actual grief? And I've been thinking through what's the actual process biblically for grief or for mourning to turn into joy and to turn into dancing and because I really do appreciate the amount of people that contact me. I get lots of messages, and it's great. It feels lovely to have so many people genuinely concerned about me. But even in that, right? I'm not having a go at anyone, but I'm not falling apart. I'm actually falling together. And I quote in conversations with people. I quote Stephanie Gretzinger. I don't know how to pronounce her last name, but the song "Defender." I quote that so much because um, I'm just falling into him, and I'm not. I'm actually falling together. I know I'm falling together. Again, connected to the concepts and the revelation, the understanding I have that in all things He's actually making me. He said, "Follow me, and I will make you." So He's not. The unmaking has happened, as in going from unsaved to saved, dealing with issues, dealing with sin. Um, the unmaking, because sometimes you need to unmake something to make it. So that's actually happened. I've been unmade so that I can be made. And over the last sort of 30 plus years of my life, things have been put off so that things can be put on. And there's still more things to put off, and there's still more things to put on. So I have actually wondered a little bit myself. I really do have, I've had some good moments. I've put them all over YouTube and Facebook. Doesn't bother me in the slightest. But I wanted to look at it biblically. And I wanted to look at, because people are still concerned, and I do appreciate it, thank you. But I think people are genuinely expecting that this will take months and years, and I really do understand the concepts, and I'm not trying to, I don't know, I'm not trying to big note myself, and I'm not trying to say anything bad about people's own personal grief experiences because I know a lot of people are actually talking out of that when they're giving me encouragement and counselling and advice. So everyone's situations are different. And everyone's path is different. But I sort of was. I don't want to. I don't want to have an expectation due to someone else's experience with grief. I don't want to have an expectation that's potentially worldly. The Bible influences everything. And everything, as I've said sort of numerous times in the last couple of years, Paul encourages me personally to not even think outside of what is written, to not even think outside what is written. So a certain thing might actually be correct, as in it's people's experiences, it's genuine, people aren't making things up. But nonetheless, for me, if it's not biblical, I actually don't want it. I don't want it in my head. I don't want to have a worldly expectation of anything, whether it be grief or anything, nothing. I don't want a worldly expectation. I want a biblical expectation. I want a biblical explanation of it, and I want the Bible to be my guide. So I've gone away and done a study on grief biblically, but not as in just going through every Bible verse on sadness, mourning, all that sort of stuff. Looking at the concept of mourning because of actual loss, because there's mourning in the scriptures that's a mourning due to sin and repentance and putting on sackcloth and all that because of sin, and because sin has been revealed, and because sin is now being dealt with, and God is saying that's your mourning, your heaviness is because of your sin. And so it does use mourning in that context, but I was looking for scriptures where mourning was from the viewpoint of grief. But then again, I didn't just want to look at mourning from grief, because you can get that when, David loses the baby after he did the wrong things with Bathsheba. So there was still actually sin involved in David's mourning there. And the baby died and David mourned. And that's fine. So it's still mourning connected to grief, but it's mourning connected to sin. And it also, in say, that example there, it doesn't actually tell you anything about the process out. It just says that he went into mourning, and his men were, and then he sort of did the days of mourning, as in the officialdom of mourning, and then he just got out of it. Well, see, that's actually not the concept I want either. So I was specifically looking at grief or mourning and the turning aspect. How does God transition someone out of mourning into literally joy and dancing? So let me just give a little bit of ramble now. So, let's just have a look. So I found realistically 4 verses in the whole Bible, and now looking at it, it's actually narrowed down. There's really only one. So Psalm 30, verse 11 and 12 is the one we're going to look at tonight. But also there was one in Ecclesiastes 7, verse 2. But that's, when you really look at it, that's in the whole Ecclesiastes, depression. Oh, woe is me. Better to go to the house of the mourning than the house of joy, because in the end, what's it all? Nothing was. So strike that one off the list. That's not in the thing. And then Isaiah 60, verse 20. Again, God's talking to Israel, and he's talking about the coming Messiah, and he's talking about the end of mourning and the end of grief, and that he will become their light, and the sun will no longer go down on them, because the glory is going to rise, and he himself is going to be their light. So again, it's talking about mourning for past life, past experience, and it's more connected to the glorification of the Son than it is to the actual grief of the people. So that's not one that we're going to look at, and it's the same with Isaiah 61 verse 3. It's the same concept, except in Isaiah 61 verse 3, it's the Spirit of the Lord is going to be upon me, and I'm going to go forth and preach, and I'm going to go forth and I'm going to declare, and because of that, people's mourning is going to be turned into joy. So again, that one's out, because it's not connected to grief. It's connected to the Spirit of God upon me, and the Spirit of God upon his people, and that the message of salvation is going to go forth, and the message of salvation is going to turn people's mourning into joy. So again, it actually gets narrowed down when you want to look at grief or mourning from a viewpoint purely of the actual transition, not connected to sin. You've got to go to one verse, and that's Psalm 30, verse 11. So I'm going to read it, okay? And I'm going to read it out of the New King James Version, which is my go-to version of the Bible. And it says, it says, you have turned me, and see, that's really the concept that I wanted to look at, the turning. You have turned for me my mourning into dancing. You have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness, to the end that my glory may sing praise to you and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to you forever. So that's really it. The two verses there, and predominantly the one verse, which is verse 11. So just doing some really basic, not in depth, but some really basic word searches there. So the key word there, one of the first key words, number one, you have. So the process of coming out of mourning into dancing, the process of putting off sackcloth and being clothed with gladness is initiated by God. You have done it, right? It's initiated by God. And he says, you have turned. And key word there now is turned. The transition from mourning into dancing, from sackcloth, being clothed with gladness, the transition. So the word turned, it's actually quite an aggressive word. It's not just turning as in you turn your head. It's more of a transformational. It's a transformational concept. It's an aggressive word, very active. So it means to change, to actually overturn. But again, the overturning as in a violence of overturning. I just stood up and ripped this table up and overturned it. It's an overturning it's a boom. It's a big transition. It's an aggressive, deliberate, let's just get this table gone, whack. So to change, to overturn, to actually become, to be converted, to actually be converted and to retire something, as in to retire an old thing, an old characteristic, an old habit, to retire it and take on something new. But all of the concepts, it's aggressive, and it's not really when I read it. It doesn't matter how I read it, and it doesn't matter how, if I go even a little bit more detailed into the words. There's actually not really a concept of this slow progressive process. It's more bang, it's more whack than a slow, subtle process. And it's something that God does. You have turned. And then it actually connects. So it says, you, God, you have turned for me my mourning into dancing. So it starts with God, and in a couple of words, it's actually about me. And because of that, the word turned also actually, I just poked the screen because I was poking my Bible. You have turned for me my mourning into dancing. And because it goes from you turned me, the concept of turned, the aggressive change, the overturning, the becoming, the being converted, it's also actually connected to me turning myself to the change that God is doing and accepting the opposite of where I was. So I was the one in mourning. I'm the one in mourning. But I know that God has turned that for me. And now part of that turning is simply me acknowledging, accepting and agreeing with God, moving away from the old and moving into the new. And even if in Ephesians, I've taught it many times, that you have to put off before you can put on. And so the turning process is me understanding that God's at work, that God's doing things, that God's actively engaged and aggressively engaged, and then me saying, well, okay, I agree with that, I believe that, I accept that, I allow you to do that, I'm in. So God initiating something and me agreeing with him and accepting it, both of those are in the concept of being turned from mourning into dancing. Mourning, again, there's not really, you look at the Greek word, there's not really anything in it. It's mourning, it's sadness, it's unhappiness, it's mourning. Dancing, same thing. It's talking about joy being expressed. It actually uses the word glee. Happiness. Let's just do a happy dance. Lizzie, got a friend of mine, Lizzie dance. She does happy dance. I love that. So that's just literally dancing. So there's no point going too deep into that word. But then it says, "You have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness." And sackcloth is really what it is. Sackcloth is literally putting on a sack. It's clothes that are absolutely useless. They're of no value. It's no value as a sack because now you've ripped it and cut it and you put it on. It's got no protection against the elements. It's just sort of that meshy material. It's worthless as clothes. So it's you putting on clothes of no substance, of no value, and with no protection at all. So and mourning, with the mourning and the grief, it's that. It's sackcloth. It's clothes with no purpose. It's clothes with no protection. It's clothes with no value, with nothing divine in it at all. It's just yuck. And you put it on because there's shame and there's sadness, and you put it on because it's the right time to do it for whatever the season in your life is. But it's not meant to be a long-term clothing accessory because it's useless as clothing. It's worthless. It's seasonal and it's short seasonal. No one in the Bible went around in sackcloth for weeks, months, and years. I don't think. Perhaps Jeremiah, lying on his side and doing all those prophecies and stuff. But it's not, sackcloth isn't clothing that you put on and you keep on and you walk around with for months. It's just pointless. And then when it says clothes, so you have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness. The clothing there is literally talking about a belt, something that girds you up, something that strengthens you, actually something that equips you and holds other things together. A belt, you do the belt up, you latch it up. So it's really the girding up, the strengthening, the holding together. And it actually talks about being equipped by the belt. And then, of course, you've got those Ephesians things with the armor of God and all that sort of stuff. And you've got other concepts in both the Psalms and Proverbs about the belt that's our buckler. And it really is it's strength. It's a symbol of strength. And you buy a really, really good leather belt and it will last you your life, right? So again, it's a really good transition there. So you've turned for me and I've acknowledged what you're doing and accepted it. My mourning into dancing, you have put off my sackcloth, my worthless, useless, shameful, pathetic clothing of no value. And you've clothed me, you've girded me up, you've strengthened me, you've held me together, you've equipped me with gladness, which literally means joy, excitement, pleasure. Joy, excitement, pleasure. So obviously there's still a process to some of those changes, but I'm actually not going to accept the concept that I'm going to be in mourning and grief for months. I'm not, because this scripture isn't leading me to see that as the biblical process. I know that with God, sometimes he's always doing things in our lives. And like that song Defender, we don't always know what he's doing. So in Defender, you went off to fight my battle before I even knew there was basically a war happening. You went off to do that. You came back with the head of my enemy and you called it my victory. And all I did was worship. All I did was pray. All I did was bow down. So much better your way. So the concept of the song is God was off fighting the battles. God was off beheading the enemy. I was just doing what I did, living life. And then God's walked in and said, look, here's your victory. And so while there was a process out there somehow in eternity, and God, there was a battle being fought, God was at work, but he comes to me with a suddenly and says, here's your head. This is your victory. And so while there is a process, the process in a way isn't mine. It's his as he works in me. And we all know where everyone's got experiences and testimonies where you sort of went a certain way for a long time and then all of a sudden God changed it. And it wasn't really suddenly, it just was sudden for you and new for you. So I'm actually not accepting. I'm not denying grief. I mean, I really, gosh, if I need to cry, I cry. It's happy. It's not an issue. I don't think I've ever. I haven't once held back tears. I haven't. I haven't once. Like it really. I understand that that's quite negative. So, but I'm not going to settle into. Well, I think I've said in other. Well, yeah. I'm not going to settle into the fact that I'm going to be in grief and mourning for months or for even a year. It doesn't mean I won't have my moments in that, but what I'm saying is that's not my norm. That's not going to become. That's actually not going to be my expectation. The Word of God sets my expectations, and and I actually think that a turning has happened. I think a turning has happened. And hence I've had 2 days that have actually been exceptional. I really do know that I'll have, I'll flick the visor down in the car, I'll see Christine, I know that I'll have a cry. But I think there's been a turning. And I'm even more so now that I've sort of looked at that little verse and studied it and realised that it's really the only transitional verse in the Bible on grief, then I'm actually happy that a turning has happened. And then it says in verse 12, right, it says, so the morning brings sadness and the morning brings silence because there's a struggle to express. And the morning does bring tears and heaviness and weightiness, right? But it says, you have turned for me my mourning into dancing. So the expression of my life has changed. The mourning, the heaviness, the silence has gone into dancing. And the sackcloth, the old, useless, pathetic, shameful, ugly clothes have been removed and I have been girded up and there's a belt gone around me that's his belt because you have put off my sackcloth and clothed me with gladness. And there's a strengthening and there's an equipping and the gladness is just, it's joy, excitement, pleasure. To the end that my glory may sing praise to you and not be silent. Again, the concept of God turning it all into a testimony, that my glory may sing praise to you and not be silent. Oh Lord, my God, I will give you thanks forever. So you've got to come up out of the morning. The dancing does have to begin. The sackcloth needs to be ripped off because until it is, the new clothes can't come on and the gladness can't be expressed and the testimony can't be sung and the praise to him cannot come. Because he doesn't put that heaviness on us. He doesn't dull us down. He doesn't silence us. He wants everything that he's doing in our life to come and to be expressed with just awesome wonder and adoration and glorification of him as our King. And so many times through the videos with Christine and I think even in a couple of recent posts, truly, all hail King Jesus. Like all hail King Jesus. So I'm not telling anyone off, but anyone that watches these videos, please stop inferring that this is going to be a struggle for a long time because we just need to be biblical. I'm going to be biblical. Everything that happens in the next, weeks, months, years of my life, everything that happens is going to be biblical. Every single thing that happens is going to be prefaced by prayer and by worship and by adoration of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And morning into dancing. Let's dance. Let's just get up and dance with Jesus. Let's get loud, dance with Jesus. Let's accept the fact that that morning is going, the turning, the transition is well and truly on the way. It's happening. It's parts of it have happened, and I'm clothed. There's something godly and good and strong. I'm being girded up. I'm being strengthened with gladness, and I'm going to have far more happy days than I have sad days. I'm just going to have far more, because there's that There's the testimony. And I'm going to declare his goodness. I'm going to declare his greatness. And in all things, I'm going to give thanks. And there's many, many things to give thanks for. Amen. Many things. Many wonderful, wonderful, wonderful things to give thanks for. God's goodness is evident and being expressed in so many ways that I don't have time to talk about now. But, again, even through the process of time in the hospital in ICU, the goodness of God is one of Christine's favourite songs, the goodness of God. And that with a few others in the hospital, they became anthems, and we just sang them. And we just sang them over Christine, and we worshipped together with that song. And the goodness of God is exceptionally good. It's exceptionally good. So, yeah, I suppose it's just a little bit of a heads up, guys. Really do appreciate the love, the care, the concern. Really, really, really do. But politely, please don't put your expectations on me. Really not having to go at anyone there, because I know everyone is incredibly well-meaning, and motivations are brilliant. It's all from love and care. And people who've been hurt are trying to encourage me to bring me out of my hurt. And I really, really do appreciate that. But go away. Can I just encourage you to go away and do your own little look on this psalm? You do a bigger study, because this, the problem is that I think it's the only verse that shows the transition. So let's have biblical expectations for everything that we do. Hey, let's have biblical expectations for the experiences that we are having in life, for the experiences that we're yet to have. Let's make everything biblical. I think biblical is the best way. The world's way is never the right way, ever. It's never the right way. It's the world's way doesn't affect me. I'm not of the world. I'm of Christ. And so, anyway, this is a little bit of a blur. I hope it made sense. I've been staring at my Bible, which has been on my screen, so I'm assuming I have been looking at you. It's all good. But yeah, I think I'm really blessed by that. That's wonderful. Have a great morning. I don't know. Will I go back to bed? Will I go to sleep? Who knows? Bless you all. Morning turned into joy and dancing. I'm going to take that. It's going to be awesome. It is awesome. 2 exceptional days. Smiling, worshipping, walking around the supermarket, giving thanks to God. It's awesome.